Welcome to Shielded Voices, the podcast where we break the stigma, build resilience, and support the men and women who serve our communities. I'm Mitch, a dedicated law enforcement professional with over 8 years of full-time experience and a combined 15 years of experience in law enforcement. My journey began as a police cadet, a reserve police officer, and now I am a full-time deputy. I am a defensive tactics instructor, an emergency vehicle operations instructor, and a former drug recognition expert. Now, I'm here to share the conversations that matter the most.
And I'm Brian, a deputy with over 15 years of service. I bring my experience as a defensive tactics instructor, emergency vehicle operations instructor, field training officer, a member of the riot team, as well as the narcotics team as a liaison. I'm also a veteran of the United States Army, and I am passionate about faith, family, and supporting our brothers and sisters in law enforcement.
Together, we're here to share stories, insights, and real talk about the challenges and triumphs of life in law enforcement. Whether it's breaking down the barriers around mental health, reflecting on our own shared experiences, or providing tools for growth and recovery, we're here to have the conversations that matter.
Our goal is simple: to support first responders, foster open communication, and remind everyone in this community that they are never alone. This is a space for growth, connection, and building stronger voices together.
Thank you for joining us. Let's dive into today's episode where we continue to break the silence. Hello everyone, this is Mitch from Shielded Voices. This is a presentation called Enduring the Badge, Building Resilience in Modern Policing. Welcome and thank you for being here. Whether you're here voluntarily or you're told to watch this, I want to start by saying I see you. I understand this job. I've worn the badge, I've carried the weight. I've been through the kind of darkness that too many of us are still hiding behind. And I'm standing here today because I survived it. Not because I'm stronger than anyone else, but because I stopped pretending I wasn't broken. This presentation is called Enduring the Badge for a reason. Because that's what most of us are doing. We're enduring, we're surviving, we're pushing through. But how many of us are actually thriving? How many of us are healthy, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? We talk about officer safety, tactics, and tools, but we rarely talk about what the badge costs us over time. Our peace, our identity, our connection to family, even our will to live. Let's be real. Law enforcement is in a mental health crisis. According to Blue Help, more officers die by suicide each year than in the line of duty. In 2021, over 180 suicides were reported. In 2022, the number hit 187. And those are just the ones documented. Many are misclassified or never publicly acknowledged. Studies show that between 19 and 34% of law enforcement officers meet the criteria for PTSD. Depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and burnout are often brushed off as just part of the job, but the truth is they're warning signs. This is why we're here today. This isn't a box-checking class. This is a mirror. A chance to look honestly at where you are and how you're really doing under the weight of the badge. Let me set the tone for the next hour. This won't be a slideshow full of generic bullet points and department slogans. This is going to be raw, personal, and real. I'm going to share what I've lived, the mistakes I've made, the bottom I hit, and the recovery I fought for. But I'm also going to talk about you. The culture we're in, the silence we've learned to keep, the damage it causes, and how we can start doing better, not just for ourselves, but for each other. Kevin Gilmartin, in his book Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, talks about what happens to us emotionally in this job. How we start off enthusiastic, idealistic, even excited. But over time, the trauma, the hypervigilance, the constant need to stay on, it wears us down until we become what he calls emotional zombies. We function, we respond, we joke, but inside we're disconnected. Disconnected from our families, from our sense of purpose, and from ourselves. He calls it the hypervigilance biological roller coaster, and I'm going to talk more about it later. But just know this, it's not a personality flaw, it's not a weakness. It's a predictable effect of a career in law enforcement. And if we don't understand it, it'll break us. Today is about challenging that old culture of silence, that suck it up mindset that got too many of our brothers and sisters killed or lost in addiction, divorce, or despair. That culture says asking for help is weakness, but I'm standing here as proof that asking for help is what saved me. I don't need you to agree with everything I say today. I just need you to stay open, listen, reflect, and be honest with yourself. Because even if you're fine right now, maybe someone you love isn't. Maybe someone you work with is hanging on by a thread. And maybe your vulnerability today can be the thing that gives someone else permission to ask for help tomorrow. Before we get deeper into the content, I want you to think about this. When was the last time you were really honest with yourself about how this job is affecting you? Let's keep that question in your back pocket as we go. Let's talk about why we're really here today. This profession has a way of convincing us that we're fine until we're not. That we're trained to survive anything, handle any call, push through any shift. And while that may be true in the moment, the cost of pushing through over and over again without rest, without healing, is slowly eating us alive. We're facing a quiet epidemic in law enforcement, one that's not being broadcast in daily briefings or captured on body camera. It's happening in living rooms, in garages, in unspoken pain and behaviors. It's the mental health crisis happening behind the badge. Let me put this into perspective. According to Blue Help, more officers die by suicide than by all line-of-duty deaths combined in recent years. In 2022, 187 officers took their own lives, compared to 136 line-of-duty deaths. And those are just the reported cases. Research from the Ruderman Family Foundation found that first responders are 5 times more likely to suffer from PTSD and depression than the general population. And yet many of us don't even recognize the signs, or we refuse to admit them. Why? Because this job trains us to suppress, to compartmentalize, to move on. We tell ourselves it was just another call. We say, I'm fine, just tired. We laugh off trauma. We turn into sarcasm. We pour another drink. We keep the mask on. But eventually the cracks show up. And when they do, they often show up as broken relationships, heavy drinking or drug use, explosive anger or complete withdrawal, and in the worst cases, suicide. Kevin Gilmartin in Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement explains this as the hypervigilance biological roller coaster. At work, we're alert, mission-focused, amped up. We're scanning for threats, managing chaos, feeling powerful and needed. That's the high end of the roller coaster. But when we go off duty, the chemicals drop. We crash, emotionally and biologically. We feel tired, detached, unmotivated. We isolate. We get irritable. We stop doing the things that bring us peace. And because no one explains this cycle to us, we start to think, what is wrong with me? Why don't I feel like myself anymore? Why can't I just be happy at home? This is what the job does to people over time if we don't learn to fight back in the right ways. The culture we grew up in taught us to stay silent, to stay hard. But the problem is, silence doesn't protect us. It kills us. We have to ask ourselves, how many more names do we want to add to the wall before we admit that mental health is officer safety? How many more funerals? How many more partners who seemed fine the day before? Here's a personal challenge for you. Think of someone you work with, someone you've seen change. Maybe they're quieter. Maybe they've stopped going to calls. Maybe their fuse is shorter than it used to be. The person might not be burned out. They might be breaking. The truth is, this presentation matters because you matter. Your mental health isn't a luxury, it's survival. Ask yourself this, am I really okay? Or am I just surviving the shift, hoping nobody notices how tired I am inside? Now, I'll show you what this spiral looked like in real time. How even someone with a decorated, respected career can start slipping long before anyone notices. Let me walk you through what it looked like for me, and for many of us. I started in law enforcement the way a lot of us do, motivated, committed, proud. I was a cadet at a young age, then a reserve, and eventually got hired on full-time. I took on collateral assignments. I became an instructor, evoc, defensive tactics, and was even a former DRE. I was building my reputation, helping others grow, trying to be the guide people could count on. From the outside, it looked like I had it all dialed in. I was respected, I was competent, I had the certifications, the titles, the performance evaluations. But something changed over time, and it didn't start with a big traumatic event. It started with a slow burn of burnout. I found myself withdrawing. I wasn't eager to take on calls. I started avoiding certain risks. I chalked it up to having a family now, or being more cautious, more seasoned. But deep down, I was just tired. Tired in ways I didn't even understand. My priorities started to shift, and not in a healthy, intentional way. I told myself, my family is more important. I need to make it home, which is true. But what I didn't admit was that I was also afraid. I'd seen too much. The job had taken too much. And I didn't know how to refill the tank. I started justifying emotional disengagement as maturity. I started calling numbness experience. I started letting the job define me. But I couldn't live up to the version of myself I had created. And when the job becomes the only place you feel in control, you stop investing in the rest of your life. That's what happened to me. I stopped investing in myself, in my passions, in my peace. I stayed plugged in at work, but I was unplugging from my own life. Have you ever been there? You go home and sit in the driveway for 15 minutes before going inside. You pretend to listen to your spouse or your kids, but your mind is stuck on that last call, or you completely shut off. You feel disconnected from the people you love, and instead of reaching out, you scroll, you drink, you shut down. That was my pattern. And the worst part, I had no idea it was happening because I was still doing my job. I was clocking in, still backing calls, still qualifying at the range. But on the inside, I was slipping. Let me ask you this. How many officers have we lost emotionally, mentally, relationally, long before they ever left the department? How many of us are walking around checked out, going through the motions, wondering what happened to the version of ourselves we used to be? We don't talk about this enough. We don't talk about the guy who used to be the first through the door but now hesitates to go on a traffic stop. We don't talk about the woman who used to be the most energized rookie on the ship, who now avoids small talk and spends lunch alone. We don't talk about the partners who used to laugh at the dumbest stuff while on swing shift, but now barely make eye contact. These are warning signs, not just for ourselves, but the culture around us. Think about the version of yourself you brought into this job. Where is that person now? And how do you start finding them again? In the next few slides, I'm going to share how my spiral unfolded. And I hope it gives someone in this room permission to take a hard look at what might be happening in their own life. This is where things started to change for me, and I didn't even notice it at first. Like a lot of us, I started my career hungry. I wanted to go on every call and every foot pursuit, first through the door. I lived for the energy, for the team, for the mission. But slowly, the job started wearing on me. Not from one big incident, but from the accumulation of everything. The nights, the trauma, the politics, the pressure to stay sharp and stoic 24/7. I stopped volunteering for things. I started hesitating, not because I was lazy, but because I was tired, worn down, disconnected, and I didn't even realize it, but others did. I started hearing, "You good? You've been a little off lately. You're not the same guy you used to be." And I brushed it off. I told them I'm tired, or it's just the kids. That was the thing. We get really good at hiding behind the reasons that sound responsible. Kids, schedule, burnout, politics, admin, just need a vacation. But underneath those reasons are often the real symptoms of emotional decline. I used my family as an excuse. I told myself I was pulling back because I was being smart, playing it safe. I have a family now. I can't afford to get hurt. And to be fair, there's truth in that. But here's the harder truth. I was scared. Scared of another close call. Scared of one more suicide scene. Scared that I was reaching my breaking point and I didn't know how to say it. So I pulled back. I disengaged. I stopped training as hard. I skipped the gym. I slept more but felt worse. I avoided people or I snapped at them for things that never used to bother me. I was slowly checking out and I convinced myself I was just adapting. Kevin Gilmartin talks about this exact pattern. He calls it emotional withdrawal, when officers begin shutting down as a way of protecting themselves from overload. You lose interest in the things you used to love. You go home and collapse. You isolate. And worst of all, you stop connecting to the people who care about you the most. If you ever sat in your car in the driveway for 20 minutes before walking inside, if you ever stared at your phone when your kids are talking because you just can't engage right now, if you've ever started your day already counting down the hours until you can pour that drink, you're not alone. This is what this slide's about. Here are some of the common warning signs that often get missed or dismissed. Increased irritability over small things. Avoiding coworkers or family. Losing interest in the things you used to enjoy. Constant fatigue even with rest. Overeating, undereating, or substance use. Withdrawal from close relationships. Using humor or sarcasm to deflect any real emotion. Feeling numb but telling yourself, I'm fine. Let's be honest, how many of these do you recognize in yourself or in your team? And here's the dangerous part. In this profession, we normalize burnout. We confuse emotional numbness with toughness. We wear fatigue like a badge of honor. But those habits don't make us stronger. They slowly destroy us from the inside out. When was the last time you checked in with yourself? Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And if the answer is, I can't remember, then this right here is your red flag. For the supervisors listening to this PowerPoint, when your people start pulling back, getting short, calling out more, showing up but not really showing up, please don't assume laziness or attitude. Ask what's going on beneath the surface. Sometimes it's not a performance issue, it's pain. Up next, we're going to talk about why so many of us miss these signs and how the culture we were trained in taught us to ignore them. We were raised on an old school version of toughness. But what if that version of resilience is part of what's breaking us? Let me show you what I mean. Let's talk about what many of us were taught resilience was and why that definition nearly broke us. If you've been in this profession for more than 5 minutes, you've heard it. Don't be soft. You signed up for this. Rub some dirt on it and move on. If you can't handle it, maybe this job isn't for you. Sound familiar? That's the culture many of us grew up in. Back then, resilience didn't mean recovery or healing. It meant hiding. It meant pushing through, stuffing your feelings and showing no weakness. We watched senior officers laugh off trauma. We saw people go into gnarly scenes, suicide, child abuse, fatalities, and then crack jokes 5 minutes later. We learned quickly that emotion made people uncomfortable. So we didn't cry, we didn't talk, we just shove it down. And on the surface, it looked like it worked. These were the guys who never missed a shift. They got promotions. They seemed unshakable. But here's what we didn't see, or maybe we just didn't talk about. The alcohol abuse, the failed marriages, the sleepless nights, the chronic anger, the suicide attempts, the quiet despair that followed them into retirement. What looked like toughness was often trauma with a mask on. Dr. Gilmartin writes about this directly in Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. He says that officers often develop emotional armor early in their careers, not just to survive the job, but to survive the culture of the job. And over time, that armor becomes so thick that they lose touch with the parts of themselves that feel, process, or connect. They become what he calls emotional survivors, still breathing, still functioning, but hollow inside. And because we were told for so long that this was normal, we internalized that numbness as professionalism. If it doesn't bother me, I'm good. If I can joke about it, I'm strong. But the truth is, that kind of resilience is a ticking time bomb, because trauma doesn't disappear just because you don't talk about it. It shows up in your health, your family, your temper, your coping habits, your sleep, your soul. Let's name the main ingredient of the old school mindset. Let's name the main ingredients of the old school mindset. Silence, suppression, sarcasm, isolation, overwork, pride. And the results? They're not good. The National Study of Police Suicide showed that officers who described themselves as emotionally hardened are at a significantly higher risk for alcohol misuse, divorce, anxiety and depression, domestic violence, and yes, suicidal thoughts. So when we say, that's just how it's always been, we need to stop and ask, how's that been working for us? What did resilience mean to you when you started this job? And what parts of that definition have you outgrown or need to let go of? I'm not here to trash our predecessors. Many of them did the best they could with what they had. They didn't have peer support. They didn't have therapists who understood cops. They didn't have training on emotional survival or neuroscience of trauma. They had grit, and grit kept them alive, but it didn't always help them live. We can honor their sacrifices and do better. We can be the generation that breaks the silence and redefines strength, not as stoicism, but as authenticity, awareness, and connection. Up next, I want to show you what modern resilience looks like. Not the one we were handed, but the one we're building now. One that's rooted in recovery, in honesty, in community, in growth. Because real strength isn't about pretending you're unbreakable. It's about refusing to stay broken. This is where everything starts to shift. We talked about the cost of old school toughness, the silence, the isolation, the pressure to stay strong no matter what. But what if I told you resilience isn't about pushing through the pain? It's about facing it. Modern resilience is not about being unbreakable. It's about refusing to stay broken. For a long time, I thought being resilient meant being cold, unshakable, someone who could handle anything and keep it bottled up. But that version of me was quietly drowning. Real resilience, the kind I've come to know in recovery, looks completely different. Let me give you a new definition to sit with. Modern resilience means the ability to adapt, to grow, and to stay connected in the face of adversity. It's not the absence of struggle. It's the way we respond to struggle. That's the message we need in this profession now more than ever. Because the old way isn't working, it's killing us. But there's a better way, and I'm living proof that it's possible to get there. So what does modern resilience actually look like? It looks like going to therapy, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't want to talk. It looks like showing up to AA meetings, not because you're weak, but because you want to live better. It looks like reaching out when you're not okay, whether that's a friend, a peer support team, or a crisis line. It looks like setting boundaries, saying no to overtime when you need rest, saying yes to your family without guilt. It looks like building a routine that supports your mental health, sleep, movement, prayer, hobbies, service. It looks like admitting I'm struggling and knowing that it doesn't make you any less of a warrior. Kevin Gilmartin talks about this reframe. In Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, he says that officers who thrive long-term are the ones who develop what he calls emotional survival skills. These aren't just coping tools, they're life tools. He points out that officers can either 1, let the job consume their identity, damage their relationships, and hollow them out from the inside, or 2, learn to process stress, build emotional armor that breathes, and stay connected to a sense of purpose beyond the badge. That second path is modern resilience. And here's the truth. It doesn't look the same for everyone. For some, it's therapy. For others, it's faith. For me, it's both, along with AA, writing, storytelling, and spending time with my family. That's my version. What does resilience look like for you right now, in this season? And how early is it from what you were taught early in your career? Let's also be honest. Modern resilience isn't easy. It takes more courage to be vulnerable than it does to pretend you're fine. It takes more discipline to stay connected than it does to isolate. But here's what I've learned. This path works. And it's what saved my life. It's why I'm standing here. And it's why I keep showing up to help others find their way forward. According to the IACP's Officer Safety and Wellness Report, officers who engage in regular wellness practices like peer support, therapy, journaling, or spiritual connection report up to 40% lower symptoms of PTSD and depression. Let that sink in. Not only is modern resilience healthier, it's more effective. Now that we've talked about what real resilience looks like, let me show you what happened when I lost mine and how the spiral almost took me out. This next part is going to get personal, and it's not easy to share, but I'm sharing it in case someone out there is quietly walking the same path. This is the part that's hard to say out loud, but even harder to keep quiet. By the time I was really struggling, I didn't know it was struggling. I thought it was just a job, just being tired, just life with the kids. I had every excuse, and some of them were believable, even to me. But the truth was I was falling apart. And like a lot of us do, I didn't fall apart all at once. It was slow, subtle, a series of small compromises. Started drinking more. At first, it was just to take the edge off. Then it was to sleep. Then it was just to feel normal. I'd finish a shift, grab a drink, then another. It became a ritual, quiet, easy to hide. I convinced myself I deserved it, that it helped, that it was just how I unwind. But really, I was just self-medicating the pain I could not name. I went on and off different meds, trying to find the right combination for anxiety, sleep, anger, focus, you name it. Each one made me feel a little different, but none of them made me feel like myself. I grew resentful, frustrated, more disconnected. I stopped investing in relationships, started snapping at people I loved. I wasn't just tired, I was done. And I still told myself I was fine. This is what a spiral looks like for a lot of people. You stop showing up early. You start leaving as soon as your shift ends. You fake smiles at briefings. You avoid coworkers who check in too much. You miss the gym. You numb out with alcohol, food, isolation, or risky habits. And because we're good at looking fine, we go unnoticed until we can't anymore. Dr. Gil Martin calls this the emotional crash. The adrenaline of the job is gone. The sense of purpose fades. And all the identity we built around the badge starts to feel like a cage. And when we're no longer finding meaning or connection, we disconnect from ourselves and everyone around us. I remember waking up and not wanting to get out of bed. I remember feeling like there was no point to anything, not because of one traumatic incident, but because I had no reserve left. The tank was empty, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. This is what we don't talk about enough in law enforcement. The years of cumulative stress and unresolved trauma that silently unravels us. According to 2023 Police One Mental Wellness Survey, over 50% of officers report symptoms of burnout. 41% admit to alcohol misuse. 29% meet the criteria for PTSD. And the majority, over 65%, said they hadn't sought help. Why? Because of stigma, fear, shame, pride, culture. Because we don't want to be that guy. Because we think asking for help means we've failed. Because we think no one will understand. Or worse, no one will care. Have you ever been in a place where you were doing everything right on the outside, but you were losing yourself inside? What patterns in your own life might be warning signs you've ignored? This slide is where you pause, not to make anyone uncomfortable, but to make it real. The spiral doesn't always look like a breakdown. Sometimes it looks like excellence on the surface and despair in the shadows. And I know that because I've lived it. In the next slide, I'm going to walk you through what happened when that spiral hit rock bottom. This isn't easy to talk about, but it's the part of my story that matters the most, because it's the part where everything almost ended and where recovery began. This is the part of the story that could have ended everything. Let me take you back to a moment that, for me, felt like there was no way forward. This wasn't a bad day. This wasn't stress. This was the edge. It was November. And I remember pacing in front of my gun safe over and over again, thinking about ending it. Not just a passing thought, not a vague idea, a plan. A moment-by-moment script in my mind. I imagined what it would look like, where I would do it, what my wife would find, what my kids would walk in on, and I still didn't stop. That's how far gone I was. And maybe that sounds shocking. Maybe it sounds like something that happens to other people. But let me tell you, this happens to people just like us. People who are great at their job. People who are the funny ones in the locker room. People who never miss a shift. Because the truth is, those people are also carrying the most. Let's pause and be honest. If you've ever felt like you wanted to disappear, if you've ever thought your family would be better off without you, if you've ever scared yourself with your own thoughts, you're not weak. You're not broken beyond repair. You're human. And you're not alone. In that moment, I didn't care what would happen to my coworkers. I didn't care what the department would say. I didn't even care how my family would survive after I was gone. That's what suicidal ideation does. It convinces you that your pain is permanent, that it's your fault, that your death would be doing everyone a favor. That's a lie, but it doesn't feel like one when you're in it. I had already turned over my guns voluntarily because someone noticed something was wrong. A friend stepped up, told the truth to the right people. That act might have saved my life. Because even though I still felt like ending it, someone interrupted the plan. That night, the police were called to my home. I had passed out. Nothing dramatic happened, no standoff, no news story. But inside, everything had shifted. That was the bottom. That was the moment I knew I can't keep doing this. Let's step back. According to Blue Help, over 1,300 officers have died by suicide in the past decade. That's more than line-of-duty deaths over the same period. And most of them gave no warning signs. That's the terrifying part. They kept showing up to work. They kept texting back. They kept smiling in group photos until the moment they didn't. Dr. Gilmartin talks about the danger of emotional suppression, how the combination of trauma, disconnection, and hypervigilance can lead to complete despair when there's no balance in our lives. He warns us, if your identity is tied only to this job and you don't have an emotional outlet, a support system, or a reason to hope, your resilience will collapse when you need it most. That's where I was. No outlet, no balance, no hope. What's your bottom? What's the moment you never wanted to reach, but sometimes fear you might? What would it mean to let someone in before you get there? If you're in this room and you've ever been close to the edge, please hear me. You are not alone. You are not a burden. You are not weak. You are not your worst moment. And there is a way back. In the next slide, I'm going to share what happened after that moment, because that wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of recovery, of real resilience, of choosing life one small, messy, meaningful day at a time. After everything I just shared, you might be wondering how I'm standing here today. How did I come back from that moment? What turned things around? The answer is complicated, but it starts with one thing. Someone noticed. A friend saw the signs I thought I was hiding well. They didn't stay quiet. They didn't brush it off. They said something. And that probably saved my life. They reached out to the department. They helped initiate the process of getting me off the street and into a place where I could start healing. And that's important to say. I didn't snap out of it. I didn't wake up the next day cured. I wasn't ready to talk about it. But the interruption, that moment where someone else stepped in and said, "You're not okay, and that's okay," was the turning point. So here's what happened next. I gave up my firearms voluntarily. I entered recovery. I quit drinking. I got into therapy. I started seeing a psychiatrist. And maybe most importantly, I walked into an AA meeting. That was terrifying. I was worried about what people would think, worried someone might recognize me, worried that admitting I was an alcoholic would ruin my credibility, my career, my identity. But the opposite happened. I found a room full of people who understood what it meant to hit bottom and keep going. People who didn't care what my badge said. They cared about who I was underneath it. That was the first place I was fully honest in a long, long time. Dr. Gilmartin talks about this kind of shift as a process of emotional reintegration. When an officer starts reconnecting to their purpose, their identity, and their capacity for joy, not by stuffing it all down, but by naming it, feeling it, and rebuilding from the inside out. Recovery, real recovery, didn't make me weak. It made me honest. It made me stronger than I've ever been in uniform. Let's talk about what saved me, not just in concept, but in practice. AA gave me structure, humility, and accountability. It reminded me that I wasn't the only one who'd felt that low. Therapy gave me tools. It gave me language for things I thought I just had to live with forever. My psychiatrist helped stabilize me. It wasn't magic, but the right meds with the right support made the fog lift just enough to start fighting again. My wife and kids gave me a reason to keep trying. I stopped asking, do I want to live? And started asking, what kind of father and husband do I want to be? My faith, though I rarely bring it up unless the moment's right, gives me hope. A power greater than myself that reminded me I wasn't doing this alone. Let me be real with you. I still have hard days. I still get triggered. I still sit in meetings and feel that lump in my throat. But I show up. I tell the truth. I let people in. And that's what resilience looks like for me now. I want you to reflect on this. Who is your someone? Who would notice if you were falling apart? And more importantly, would you let them help? If you don't have an answer to that question, this is your opportunity to change that. You don't have to get there alone. You're not supposed to. Peer support saves lives. According to IACP research, officers who engage in peer-led recovery programs or mental health interventions are 60% more likely to seek long-term care, and they're significantly less likely to face career-ending incidents or long-term disability due to emotional burnout. We need each other, not just to survive the street, but to survive ourselves. So what does life look like now? Not perfect, not polished, but alive, present, purposeful. Let me show you what it means to keep climbing. Here's the honest answer. It's still a climb. This isn't the part of the story where I say everything's great now, and we fade to black with a feel-good ending. This isn't a movie. This is real life, and real recovery is ongoing. I'm still sober. I still go to therapy. I still attend AA. I still see my psychiatrist. I still get overwhelmed sometimes. I still have moments where the dark thoughts whisper back in. But now I talk about them. I don't sit in silence. I don't hide behind a bottle. I don't let shame dictate my choices. And that makes all the difference. Let me say this clearly. Recovery is not a destination. It's a lifestyle. It's a commitment. It's a series of daily choices to be honest, to stay grounded, and stay connected. And that's what I mean when I say I'm still climbing. Dr. Gilmartin calls this intentional emotional survival. It's the opposite of just coping or pushing through. It's learning to thrive outside the uniform, to build an identity and a life that exists beyond the badge. He says that the healthiest officers he's seen in his career weren't the ones who never struggled. They were the ones who admitted when they did, and built a support system to stay healthy long term. I had to rebuild my life from the inside out. And it didn't happen with a single conversation, a single therapy session, or a single 30-day streak of sobriety. It happened one step at a time. So what does your climb look like? Maybe it starts by finally calling a therapist. Maybe it's going to your first AA meeting. Maybe it's reaching out to a peer. Maybe it's telling your spouse the truth. Maybe it's just writing something down for the first time, so the weight isn't just in your head anymore. There's no one path, but there's a common theme. The climb begins when you stop pretending you're fine. Let me give you some practical truths that guide me now. Progress is not linear. You'll have good days, bad days, days where you feel strong, days where you feel broken. That's okay. People care more than you think. When I finally opened up, I was met with compassion, not shame. It's never too late to start again. Whether you've been at this job for 2 years or 20, today can be the beginning of your comeback. Asking for help is a skill. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. And the more others see you do it, the more permission they feel to do it too. Reflect on this. What's one thing you can do today that supports your climb? What's one habit, one person, or one change that could help you start healing? Here's what I know now. I'm a better father, husband, and a friend because I got help. I'm a better officer, not because I'm perfect, but because I'm present. I'm a better human being because I stopped running from the pain and started running towards healing. I still have to work for it every day. I still have to stay honest. But the view from where I am now, it's worth it. A 2023 study by the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin found that officers engaged in consistent self-care practices like peer support, sobriety programs, therapy, and spiritual connection report 47% reduction in symptoms of burnout and emotional exhaustion. So no, it's not just feel-good fluff. It's tactical, it's measurable, it's real. Now let's shift the lens a little. What does resilience really look like in this profession today? Not just in theory, but in practice. Let's unpack that next. We've talked about pain, about burnout, about the spiral and the comeback. Now let's talk about what it actually means to be resilient in this job. Because resilience isn't a one-time event. It's not surviving a critical incident or muscling through a bad day. Resilience is a lifestyle. It's who you become, not just when everything goes right, but especially when everything goes wrong. So let's paint a clear picture of what real resilience looks like in modern policing. Resilience looks like this: emotional honesty, saying, I'm not okay, without shame. Consistency, showing up for yourself even when it's hard. Connection, letting trusted people into your struggle. Self-awareness, recognizing when you're slipping and doing something about it. Humility, admitting you need help and accepting it. Boundaries, knowing when to say no, unplug, or take time off. And last, growth, learning new tools, new habits, and letting go of old coping mechanisms. This is not weakness, this is strength, the kind that lasts. Dr. Gil Martin calls these protective behaviors. They're the emotional equivalent of wearing a vest, carrying a radio, or checking your mirrors. You don't wait until the danger is at your door. You prepare, you train, you build in the systems that keep you safe before you need them. He also talks about the concept of emotional restoration. It means actively doing things that refill your emotional tank, things that bring joy, connection, calm, meaning. For some, that's faith. For others, it's time with family. For some, it's fitness, volunteering, peer support, writing, music, or getting out into nature. Whatever it is, you need it. Because no one can give from an empty tank. And in this profession, we are constantly pouring ourselves out. What restores you? What fills your emotional tank? And are you doing it enough? Let me share what resilience looks like for me today. It's texting a friend before a spiral, not after. It's choosing a meeting over a bottle. It's showing up to therapy and telling the truth. It's being honest with my wife, even when it's uncomfortable. It's praying when I feel lost. It's not being perfect. It's being present. That's it. It's not flashy. It's not Instagram worthy, but it's real. It's sustainable. It's mine. Let's talk about what it doesn't look like anymore. Avoiding every hard call under the excuse of self-care. Working 80-hour weeks and calling it dedication. Numbing out with booze, overtime, or detachment. Laughing off trauma like it didn't hit you. Pretending your family isn't suffering too. That's not resilience. That's slow destruction. A 2022 study by the National Alliance on Mental Illness found that officers who consistently engaged in resilience-based training and peer support programs had 60% improvement in emotional regulation, 50% reduction in depressive symptoms, increased job satisfaction and retention. This isn't about kumbaya circles. This is about staying alive, staying sane, staying whole. So if you want to be a better cop, a better partner, a better parent, start with your own mental health. Because the resilient ones, they're not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who get back up and ask for a hand when they need it. What does your version of resilience look like today? And what would it look like if you gave yourself permission to grow into something healthier? Now that we talked about what resilience looks like, let's talk about what supports it. Let's go over the resources that exist for you right now and how you can access them without fear or judgment. Let's shift gears for a second. We've spent the last hour talking about the reality of the job, what it takes from us, how it affects us, and what recovery and resilience looks like. But now it's time to talk about something even more important. What are you going to do with what you've heard? Because the truth is, you don't have to figure it out alone. There are real resources available to you right now, not theoretical, not just for the really messed up people, for you, for me, for us. And yet, most officers don't use them. Why? Because we think it'll make us look weak. Because we think we'll lose our job. Because we think no one will understand. Because we're terrified of what it means to say, I need help. But let me say this clearly. Needing help doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. And getting help doesn't mean the end of your career. It might be the thing that saves your life. Let me walk you through some resources that I trust. Safe Call Now. It's a 24/7 confidential support line specifically for first responders, staffed by current and former law enforcement, fire, EMS, corrections, and dispatchers. They get it. You won't have to explain the culture before getting help. The phone number is 206-459-3020. The next one is Copline. It's run by retired officers. You talk to someone who knows the job. It's completely anonymous and they won't ask for your name. You can talk about anything: depression, anger, alcohol, family, burnout. That number is 1-800-267-5463. You also have the suicide and crisis line available. You can call or text 988 anytime, not just for active suicidal ideation. This line is for anyone in emotional distress. It's free, confidential, and it's national. If your department has a peer support team, use it. These are trained peers who know how to listen, connect, and guide. It's not therapy. It's not command. It's someone who's been through the fire and stayed standing. You also have therapists who get first responders. Not every therapist understands our world, but there are trauma-informed clinicians who specialize in public safety. Ask around, vet them, and when you find a good one, it's life-changing. You also have AA and recovery groups. If you're struggling with alcohol like I did, let me be the first to say, you don't have to wait until you lose it all. AA isn't about shame, it's about honesty. And it's one of the few rooms I've ever sat in where I felt truly seen. Now, here's where I take off the professional hat for a moment and speak directly to you, peer-to-peer. If you don't feel safe reaching out to a hotline, if you don't know who to trust, if you need information about first responder AA, or just want to talk anonymously, you can call or text me personally. No judgment, no report, no rank. I say this not because I have all the answers, but because I walked through hell and made it back. What's one resource from this slide you'd be willing to save in your phone today? Not just because you need it now, but because someone you care about might need it tomorrow. According to the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology, officers connected to support networks like peer programs or recovery groups experience 40% less burnout, 35% fewer PTSD symptoms, and significantly higher job satisfaction and family stability. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's survival, it's leadership. Before we close, I want to leave you with a message. Not about resources, not about stats, but about you and what it really means to endure the badge. If you made it this far, thank you. You sat through stories that might have hit close to home. You've heard hard truths, felt heavy moments, and maybe for the first time in a long time, reflected on your own mental and emotional well-being. Before you go, before you walk out of this room and back into the chaos of work or home or whatever waits for you, I want you to sit with this. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not alone. There's a reason this presentation is called Enduring the Badge, because that's what many of us have been doing, enduring. Not thriving, not connecting, not healing. Just holding on, getting by, making it to the next shift. But you were not built just to endure. You were built to overcome, to lead, to grow, to love, and to live. The badge is a part of you, but it's not all of you. And if there's something you've forgotten, then let today be your reminder. Let's reflect on a few things together. Have you been showing up for your job while slowly disappearing in your personal life? Have you convinced yourself that burnout is just normal? Are you surrounded by people every day and still feel totally alone? Have you felt that pull, that quiet, dangerous thought that says, what's the point? Would anyone even notice if I was gone? I can't keep doing this. If you felt that, I have too. If you've wondered if it's ever going to get better, it can. If you thought no one understands, I promise you, we do. So let me say this one last time. There's nothing weak about asking for help. There's nothing broken about needing support. There's nothing shameful about being a human in a high-stress, trauma-driven career. Strongest people I know are the ones who finally said, I can't do this alone anymore. I need help. I want to live. And those words, they've saved more lives than any training, any armor, any tactic ever could. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. 1, knowing the warning signs in yourself and in your partners. 2, Check in with intention. A quick, "You good?" isn't always enough. Ask twice, ask again. 3. Use the resources, not because you're broken, but because you matter. 4. Share your story when you're ready. You never know who it'll help. 5. Remember who you were before the job and who you still are underneath the badge. If you're struggling, let today be the day that changes something. If you're in a good place, stay ready. Be the person someone else can lean on. If you've already walked through your own fire, then share that light, because someone else in this room may be in their darkest night right now. What will you do differently after today? What's one step, small or big, that you're ready to take? You don't have to answer out loud, but don't walk away without answering it for yourself. And if nothing else stays with you from today, remember this. The people we've lost didn't go because they were weak. They left because they felt alone. They didn't stay because they were unbreakable. They stayed because they refused to stay broken. You can do the same. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for enduring and choosing to keep climbing. I'll be here after if anyone wants to talk. No judgment, no rank, no pressure. Just one human to another.